2025 was quite the year. We got the house tour, Katy Perry went to space, the Louvre was robbed, and most importantly, it was the year that Ilya and Shane went to the cottage.
I'm coming to the cottage.
In 2025, I also read a lot of books, and I categorized them by genre and ranked them so that today, you and I could go over my top favorite books of 2025 by genre. I want to kick it off with the genre that stole my heart first, which is fantasy/sci-fi. This was actually my lowest fantasy sci-fi year in a while. I just feel like there weren't that many heavy hitters. Let's just get the obvious out of the way first. Sunrise on the Reaping. Now, in order to prepare for my return to Panem, I did reread The Hunger Games and the last prequel. And let me tell you, this trilogy does in fact hold up, like absurdly well. I will gladly go on a tirade anytime about how these are modern classics, not just the way that they influence the book world at the time, but I think they should be studying these in classrooms for decades to come. But that is a rant for another day. You are here to listen to me tell you why Sunrise on the Reaping was one of my top books of 2025. Everything everyone says about this is true. And if you did not get to this in 2025, you did not miss the boat. Like the others, I do think that this one has staying power. Not only because there's a movie coming out this year, which I'm seated, but because this story is genuinely that good. This is one of the rare prequels that feels inevitable instead of optional. It does not read like bonus content or fan service. It's not filling a gap so much as like adding an extra layer that adds more dimension to the whole picture. Especially because I read the trilogy right before getting into this, I think this makes the whole series hit even harder in retrospect. What blew my mind is that this feels like, in its very DNA, a complementary mirror to Catching Fire in the original trilogy. It makes the propaganda feel more aggressive and the rules feel even more rigged. It's a book about violence, yes, but it's a book about controlling the narrative. And not to be grandiose, but I think that that is important now more than ever. And listen, I was signed up for a sad ending. I was still not prepared for the devastation, for the gut punch at the end. You have been seeing people talk about this for nearly a year now, and you will continue to, especially as promotion for the movie hypes up. And I think it's worth your while. I would not shut up about Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. If Addie LaRue was your jam, let me tell you, Addie LaRue is the appetizer. Addie LaRue is the warm-up. This is a 3-course meal. This is a plate of seconds. This is the dessert tray rolling up to your table covered in whipped cream and ganache. And this is the plate itself. Like, truly, I cannot emphasize enough to you that if you are the flavor of Victoria Schwab that likes Addie LaRue, get ready. Buckle up. All you need to know is that this is about toxic lesbian vampires across time. It has gorgeous, diabolically good prose that you can taste. It's about hunger, it's about love that curdles, and it's about the slow rot of immortality. You know I'm a sucker for vampire books, and especially vampire books that really play with the concept of hunger. And this story is about hunger in every sense of the word. Hunger for freedom, hunger for love, hunger for power, hunger to be seen. Hunger is a force in this that drives these women to survive, to take, to ruin, and to remake themselves over centuries. The structure of this book is very slow and deliberate and intentionally indulgent. I would say this is definitely not a plot-forward book. It's a character-driven descent. We follow several women across centuries as immortality strips them of their humanity, and that gets replaced with something a lot sharper and more feral. It's a possessive, corrosive cage, and the prose, my God, the prose. It's so lush and obsessive and self-aware in a way that feels intentional. I wanted to crawl inside the language and live there. You could tell me that the ending was maybe a little quieter than you expected, and you could tell me that the book maybe meanders a little bit. You could tell me that it asks more of your patience than it does your adrenaline, and you wouldn't be wrong, but I would not touch a hair on this perfect book's perfect little head. Even in hindsight, when I can see that this book has flaws, I refuse to take off a star because this book made me feel so full and empty and satisfied and hungry all at once, and I didn't want it to end. Gothic indulgent writing about sapphic toxic vampires will always work on me, and I make the rules here, so 5 stars, bury me with it. The next book on this list is Catabasis. Catabasis? You pick. Oh wow, another 5-star for an R.F. Kuang book. Okay, listen, I know this was divisive for readers, but it really worked for me. This is dark academia taken very literally. It's about two academic rivals who descend into hell so that they can go find and retrieve their advisor. There's very brainy magic in this one with proofs and paradoxes and philosophy. It's the rare dark academia novel that actually commits to the bit. And it pays off. A lot of the criticism around this book has been that it's hefty and that it's just R.F. Kuang showing off how smart she is. And to that I say, and show me. I want to see. Give me your intellectual thirst trap. I'm zooming in. I want the footnotes and the explainers and to see how many of those literary references click for me because I feel smart when I read smart books, okay? I'm a simple girl. But in the middle of all that, what I think is so good about this book is how good our characters are. Both of our main characters are deeply ambitious and unbearable. Their dynamic is very acidic in the best way. They're competitive, they're petty, they're obsessed. And the way it shifts into something like trust and tenderness. In the Middle of Hell. Is this R.F. Kuang's most romantic book yet? I was fully locked in. And this book was funny as hell. I laughed out loud at this book more than once while I descended into the depths of the underworld. It's dark, it's clever, and it really worked for me. Let's take a brief detour into romantasy because I read more romantasy this year than I ever have. Now this is a subgenre that I've had very mixed experiences with in the past. I don't know if it's me changing or the books getting better, but this year there were a couple of romantasy books that really worked for me. Now these two books are both very clearly fantasy books with a romantic subplot. The next two books that I'm about to talk about are romance with fantasy elements. Clearly Rachel Gillig really works for me because I loved The Night and the Moth. And guess what? It's a slow burn romantasy in a gothic setting. If it's gothic, I will like it. I'm a simple woman. In The Night and the Moth, we have a sheltered main character who is raised in this like repressive magical convent. And she encounters this roguish knight with crooked teeth who is just so vile. How come he smiles at everybody but he scowls at her? They have to go on a quest together and they just can't stand each other. There's yearning, there's tension, and watching them get thrown together into the outside world on a dangerous quest, it's just so good. Also, whenever there's a story about a repressed woman who steps into her power and discovers what she's truly capable of, immediately a win. The fantasy plot in this is genuinely fun. It's not too hard to get into the world. It's more clever and specific than I expected. There's weird magic and a moody atmosphere. Again, this definitely leads more romance than it does fantasy, so don't expect like crazy world building or a very complex magic system. I would say that her previous duology has a stronger magic system and more interesting fantasy elements than this does, but this has better romance than that duology has, if that makes sense. However, asterisk, this is not completed yet. The second of the duology comes out later this year, so all of that could change, obviously. But all in all, there's enough action in this to like keep it moving along and keep it interesting and keep the stakes high. And I'm so excited for book 2. Oh, and the best character in this is actually a lovable, funny gargoyle. I love him the most. I'm beginning to see a pattern that Rachel can really write a unexpected, hilarious companion sidekick for her main characters. It's a strength in her books so far. I loved this and I cannot wait to get my hands on book 2. The second romantasy book and the last book in this category is In the Veins of the Drowning. This one is about a siren. Now we've established if it's gothic, I will love it. If it's a female main character who's stepping into her power to discover what she's truly capable of, I will love it. If she's a monster, I love it. I can't help it. I love a vampire. I love a siren. I love someone who becomes the monster. Now this one, I loved the premise immediately. Imogen is a member of a royal court where she is hiding in plain sight. She is starving herself of the sea so that she doesn't become like a feral siren monster lady thingy. Then a visiting king shows up and he says, I know exactly what you are. And through various salty hijinks, they escape together. There's a really fun trope in here of a magical bond. So the whole time they're like, oh, we're hot for each other, but it's just because of this magical bond. obviously. That plus the forced proximity results in a lot of pining, a lot of denying that they like each other. And I was kicking my fins, especially because the actual story was rip-roaring, rollicking fun. Like, they are on their run, people are after them, they have to complete a quest, so the stakes are high and there's a lot of danger. The plot is fun, the lore is good. This one is a banger. But if the yearning and the fantasy chops weren't enough, what really carried this for me was the atmosphere. It's salty, it's shadowy, there's a lot of suspense and hunger and dread. It keeps circling the idea of monstrosity in a way that, again, really worked for me. Because Imogen is not your perfect heroine. She is the monster. She feels sharp and desperate and capable of becoming something much worse. And I'm begging her to. It has an evil cliffhanger ending and I am pumped for book 2. I believe this is a duology. This is my first book from this author and I think so far this is the perfect romantasy. So let's see if she can stick the landing. I think it's safe to say if you like Rachel Gillig, you will love In the Veins of the Drowning. Okay, let's pivot and talk litfic. I read a good deal of litfic this year, and I have 3 on this list for you that I think are at the top of the top, including one that I might go as far as to say was my favorite book of the year, period. Hard for me. It's big for me, so I'll save that one for last. The first on this list is Sunburn by Chloe Michelle Haworth, I think is how you say it. This is essentially sapphic normal people set in 1990s rural Ireland. I did read the entirety of this summer on the beach in Maine, so that might have influenced my love for this, but easily one of my favorite books of the year. 5 out of 5 stars. And I believe this is a debut. Insane. She has another book coming out in the States here in February, and I am ready. I'm set. I'm excited. Feed me. Yeah, this is normal people for sad Irish Catholic gays. It's tender, it's gorgeous. The sticky, scorched summer prose feels like it's breathing. You think you like books about yearning? What about a yearning that is so deeply unholy you want to consume someone or die? Lucy, our main character's interiority is so specific and claustrophobic. The way she wants someone, but also the way she fears to be known, constantly negotiating her own desire, all under the threat of the community's gaze. And I mean G-A-Z-E. The prose in this is so like summer, sticky, scorched. This book really captures the like slow erosion of self when the world tells someone that they should keep the truest parts of themselves quiet. No plot, just obsessive, all-consuming yearning and shrinking to survive. I am fully ready to follow Chloe anywhere. This one will not be a shocker, but Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid did in fact make the list. This book sent me to orbit. Call me Katy Perry, hand me a daisy, and send me into space. This is like the astronaut equivalent of that scene in Top Gun when Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer kiss. It's about women clawing their way into the boys' club of 1980s NASA. And of course, there is a love story that feels like gravity, plus heaps of found family forged under pressure. This is Taylor Jenkins Reid doing what she does best, which is taking an already cinematic world of NASA, the shuttle program, the audacity of going to space, and zooming in. The most breathless moments are a look across the room, a sentence that lands wrong, a choice that can't be taken back. Suffocating Houston heat, institutional beige, fluorescent lights, the hum of mission control, the cosmic yearning. And you can feel how badly these characters want in. They want the stars. They want a seat at the table. They want a life that's bigger than the one that they were handed. And I love books like this where you kind of know what's coming, but you can still feel the dread in the margins. And still, when it hits like a blow. The characters are classic Taylor Jenkins Reid creations. They are deeply compelling, they're fully formed, they're alive on the page, and their emotional architecture is remarkable. This book is cosmic. It's about desire, it's about what it costs, it's about how love can be the thing that both steadies you and alters your orbit forever. 5 out of 5, perfect stars. And maybe my favorite book of 2025, The Favorites by Lane Fargo. The vibes are Daisy Jones and the Six, but make it about ice dance. This was my first 5-star of last year and it stuck with me all year. It is my favorite book of the year. Hands down. I rarely reread books. There's just so many exciting new books that I can experience for the first time instead of reheating old nachos. But I'm fully planning on rereading this right now. And the reason is that the 2026 Winter Olympics are coming up on February 6th. And this is about an intense, decade-spanning relationship in the brutal world of ice dance. Like, it's perfect timing to be reading this, come on. For the full immersive experience, why not? Katarina Shaw has spent her entire life chasing Olympic gold. And for a time, she and her ice dancing partner, Heath Rocha, were unstoppable. But behind their flawless routine lurked something a little messier. There were childhood wounds, all-consuming ambition, and a flaming chemistry that teetered between love and destruction. Until a scandal at the Olympics shattered everything, and they disappeared from the sport altogether. Now, 10 years later, a documentary is reigniting the world's obsession with Kat and Heath. But this time, she's taking control of her story. That documentary-style format makes the story feel so real. That's why I keep comparing it to Daisy Jones and the Six. And Lane Fargo has created a world here that's just as glittering as it is cutthroat. It's full of passion and betrayal and devastating choices. The chemistry between Katarina and Heath, it's everything. It's messy, it's magnetic, it's impossible to look away from. Add into that a toxic friendship with her biggest rival, the psychological toll of a sport that demands perfection, and a ruthless ambition that is driving every single character, and the formula of that is one of the most addictive books you will ever read. This is perfect for fans of character-driven drama with high stakes. It's a must-read if you're interested in stories about ambition, stories about messy, complicated relationships, and about the cost and the dark side of chasing greatness. I don't think I can possibly oversell this book. It is that good. I think it has wide mass appeal the same way that Taylor Jenkins Reid does, and I came in knowing nothing about ice dance or figure skating. Favorite book of 2025? Pick it up now so that you can be fully locked in with me watching this year's Olympics. Let's get spooky. Let's talk about my best horror of 2025. It was a great reading year for horror, and I narrowed this list down and it was painful, as you will see shortly. Let's not bury the lead. Let's talk about my favorite horror book of the year, and that's When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. I have never read anything quite like this before. Honestly, I think you should know as little as possible about this. Maybe even just skip the review for this one altogether and just go pick it up. Go ahead, go. But if you insist, I will tell you a little bit. First of all, you should know this is very propulsive horror. There is no moment where this book slows down or lets up. This is a scary story that starts as one thing and then it mutates into something stranger and much, much scarier. Jess is a struggling actress who is barely hanging on. She is working overnight shifts at a diner, trying not to collapse under the weight of her own life. After her shift, she finds a frightened boy in the bushes outside of her apartment complex. And by the time she sees what he's hiding from, it's too late. And it never lets up from there. It is brutal, it is bloody, it is relentlessly paced. The violence is wild and the set pieces made me like physically recoil. But underneath that all, what destroys you is that this is a book about fathers. This is a book about inherited fear. It's about being shaped by somebody else's rage or somebody else's absence. It's about what it means to grow up terrified of turning into the thing that hurt you. Even when this story goes full batshit crazy, which is pretty much from the get-go, the emotion never loosens and you always feel like the full weight of the carnage. Whatever you do, do not, under any circumstance, skip the author's note. It wrecked me. Absolutely wrecked me. I think this one is completely unforgettable. If you need a book that you cannot put down, something that will absorb you completely, something that will rip your heart out and then look at it and ask you why it was beating that way in the first place, this one delivers. 5 stars. All the stars. Stars with too many arms and too many legs that will never let me go. Frankly, this is one of the best books I have ever read. I can't wait to read more books from Nat Cassidy. I will be getting to his 2 other novels, as well as his collection of short stories that comes out this year. Okay, this next book is more thriller adjacent. In fact, when people recommend me a standard thriller like Suburban Wife and there's a nanny and the husband's cheating with the nanny and there's a murder conspiracy, I'm gonna tell them this is what I want instead. And what I want is Hungerstone by Kat Dunn. This reads like a gothic thriller. I know it's only been like 4 books since you've heard me say the word gothic, but I have a type, okay? Meet Lenore. Lenore is trapped in a loveless marriage to a steel magnate who whisks them away to a decaying manor called Nethershaw, where he demands that she prepare the estate for a grand hunt. How Victorian, you know? And Lenore has many secrets, including one very big one that haunts their entire marriage. One night, there is a carriage accident that brings the mysterious Carmilla into Lenore's life. Do you know where this is going? Upon meeting Carmilla, something is awakened within Lenore. But as Carmilla's presence grows, so does the darkness lurking within the manor. Before long, young girls in the nearby village are mysteriously falling ill, their bodies ravaged by a certain kind of hunger. A gothic, sapphic, thriller Carmilla story? What's not to love? The recipe is there. There's a feminine rage in this that is so potent, it seeps through every page. There's a, you guessed it, gothic atmosphere, haunted manors, stormy moors, a slowly creeping sense of dread, and the seductive, slow-burning sapphic love story that turns into something a lot more sinister. I am nothing if not a sucker for lyrical prose, and this has it in spades. It's hypnotic, it's hungry, the tension is immaculate. Lenore is the kind of heroine that I crave in any gothic fiction. She's tragic and yearning and brimming with an unfulfilled desire for something more and rage that she doesn't understand or hasn't tapped into yet. And Carmilla is, of course, every bit the alluring, dangerous, too good to be true kind of stranger that her genre demands. This book is feminist, it's vicious, it's sensual, it's unsettling in all the best ways. It isn't a Carmilla retelling, it's a Carmilla reinvention. I devoured this. Every bite was delicious. If you love gothic horror, if you love sapphic longings, if you like stories that drip with female rage and rebellion, this is a must read. Also, this is the stack of bookmarks that I have found in the books that I have been reviewing in this video so far. So that's fun. There's at least one more gothic book coming, but we'll take a break so that you don't have to hear me say it 5 times yet. Let's talk about The Unworthy by Agustina Basterica. This was a strange little morsel of a book, and it stuck with me for a really long time, which is why it's on this list. I wouldn't say it's an outright favorite of all time, but it's definitely one of the most impactful books that I read of the year, and I think that merits conversation. This book is about a mysterious convent in the apocalypse. It showcases the climate collapse as background dread. It is convent horror and there's religious extremism, and it's all told through this very surreal, diary style narration. It's short and it feels very dense in the way nightmares do. The whole book is written from inside of this sealed religious cultish order. The outside world is in chaos, and the effect of that is intensely claustrophobic. You are trapped with our main character in this ritual, this hierarchy, and this punishment cycle. And the writing feels very feverish and intimate, like something that you weren't meant to find. If you pick this up, you should definitely expect more of a vibe and an ideology than a plot. The world building is deliberately blurred at the edges, and the story moves like a spiral and not a straight line. If you need clear answers and a traditional story arc, this is not for you. You will be frustrated. But if you like literary horror that's more about devotion and philosophy, it tackles what people will call salvation when they're starving. And I think it really hits. This is the first work that I've read by this author, and I'm definitely interested in more, although I have heard that they only get bleaker. So that's something to look forward to, baby. Okay, let's get gothic again. This is The Possession of Alba Diaz by Isabel Cañas, and I have read 3 out of 3 of her books, and every single one of them is great. Gothic historical horror set in 1760s Mexico, where a plague forces Alba Diaz and her family to flee Zacatecas and take shelter in her fiance's silver mine. Instead of safety, Alba finds isolation and religious suffering, as well as something ancient and furious that is stirring beneath the earth. Okay, so this is my 3rd book from Isabel Cañas. I adored The Hacienda. I adored Vampires of El Norte. I adored this book. She is an instant auto read for me from here on out, right? And one of many things that I love about her stories is that sure, it's spooky, but at the end of the day, it has something to say. It has something to show you about power, about autonomy, about who gets to decide what happens to women's bodies. One of my favorite things about Isabel Cañas is that she's so good at blending genres. All of her books are nearly equal parts horror, historical fiction, and melodramatic romance. All All of those elements are perfectly braided together and so well done. I love a haunted woman, and Alba is a great one. She is trapped in this book on every axis. She's got family obligation, she's got religious oppression, and she has a literal demon trapped inside of her. But again, this is very much about autonomy and what it's like to claim it in a world that's very much designed to deny it to you. Oh, and of course the pining, soft-spoken shy boy she can't have. The prose is gorgeous. It's candlelight, it's stone corridors, it's silver and mercury, it's sweat and sickness and blood. All of her settings are sweeping and cinematic and gothic, which I love. I do think that the middle of this book lingers a little bit. The pacing is occasionally stretching out more than most readers might prefer. I think even at its slowest, this book is lush and confident, and it's exactly right for me. After 3 out of 3 incredible bangers, I will follow Isabel Cañas into whatever haunted building or cursed mine or blood-soaked historical moment that she leads me. Loved it. Incredible. Next up, we have Play Nice by Rachel Harrison, and this is a blast. I read this by a literal campfire, and the vibes were perfect. This book is funny as hell, it's smart, and nobody is doing camp like Rachel Harrison. This is a haunted house story, but with a fresh coat of paint. If you want capital H horror that's gonna like ruin your sleep, honestly, most of these books probably aren't it, but this one did have some seriously spooky moments. At every turn though, this one is far more fun than it is scary. After Cleo's parents' messy divorce, her mother moved Cleo and her sisters into a house occupied by a demon. Or so she claimed. That's not what Cleo's sisters remember or what the courts decided after they stripped her mom of custody rights. But her mom insists she's telling the truth. She even writes a book about it. After her mom's sudden death, the possessed house passes to Cleo and her sisters, but where her older sisters see family trauma, Cleo sees an opportunity for a home makeover that she can farm for content online. And Cleo as a narrator is so good. The whole idea of trying to renovate your childhood home and mine it for content is so modern, and it's so camp. And more than anything, the sibling dynamics of the 3 sisters was so fascinating to me. Come for the home renovation and stay for the demons. This book was genuinely very funny. I love campy demon vibes, and I will always enjoy a book within a book. This really works for me, and it's my favorite Rachel Harrison that I've read yet. Last on this list is Buffalo Hunter Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. The range of this author is insane to me. From My Heart is a Chainsaw, which is not my favorite, to I Was a Teenage Slasher, which is my favorite, to this is wild. Stephen Graham Jones genuinely feels like a living legend among us, and I'm always fascinated to see what he's gonna do next. This is a historical horror novel that's told through layers of found documents. You're reading a discovered diary, a priest's account, and also the confessional story of Goodstab. Goodstab is a Blackfeet man who becomes something like a vampire, and this is all about the violence of the American West. It's got revenge, it's got grief, and it's got cultural memory all tangled together. The best part here for me, without a doubt, was the accounts from Goodstab. And I loved this book's take on the idea of vampirism. The monster as a lens for identity and memory and survival and what gets taken from you. It's one of those books where the supernatural element is super cool on its face, but it's doing heavy thematic work underneath. That said, the historical sections of this are written like historical sections. Those parts really dragged for me. On multiple fronts, the language can be very intentionally inaccessible at times. And of course, the subject matter itself, which is relentlessly brutal, is not an easy read. But overall, even when this didn't necessarily click from moment to moment for me, it felt like I was reading the work of a true master. The work here is doing something very ambitious and very singular, and I will be watching whatever Stephen Graham Jones does from here on out. So if you're interested in an indigenous vampire story about becoming what you consume, about the American West writ in blood, about grief, about survival, and what it cost to remember, consider this one. I have a short section about nonfiction. I read some really remarkable nonfiction this year, and every year it's my goal to read more because I always enjoy it when I do. So 2026 read more nonfiction. I've narrowed this down to the 2 top nonfiction books that I think about all the time. The first of which is Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. I don't say this lightly, but Just Mercy is one of the most impactful books that I have read in my entire life. Bryan Stevenson's account of fighting for justice in a broken legal system is equal parts devastating, enraging, and profoundly moving. This is not just a book about wrongful convictions. It's about the soul of a nation that claims to value justice, but too often fails its most vulnerable people. This is a gut-wrenching look at the failures of the US justice system. It is real stories about real people that have been failed by bias, by poverty, and by outdated laws and policies. This is a call to action that makes you want to do something, anything, to help. But at its heart, Just Mercy is about a specific case, a Black man named Walter McMillan. He was sentenced to death for a crime that he did not commit, and his story is just one of many that Stevenson shares. And each one of these stories illustrates how poverty, how race, and how a very deeply flawed legal system has stacked the odds against the marginalized people in our country. But what makes this book unforgettable is Stevenson himself. His relentless willingness and compassion to fight even when the odds and the system seem so stacked against him. It's awe-inspiring. This book will make you feel angry, it will make you feel frustrated, it will make you feel hope. The injustices laid out here are horrifying, but in my opinion, very necessary to confront. And if you are new to reading about mass incarceration and systemic racism, be prepared for a seismic perspective shift. This was not by any means an easy read, but I do think it was an essential one. Stevenson does more than just expose the cracks in the system. He gives us a reason to believe that there is a chance for change. Change isn't possible. In fact, it's a moral imperative. I highly recommend this book. 5 out of 5 stars. This was incredibly moving. I was also deeply moved by Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green. This is a short, deeply human history about tuberculosis. It's science plus social history plus storytelling in the John Green way. This looks like, on its surface, a nonfiction book about how tuberculosis has shaped human history. It's also about why it's still killing people in huge numbers despite it being preventable and curable. John Green anchors the history in the story of Henry, a young TB patient that he met personally in Sierra Leone. He uses that relationship as the emotional through line as he zooms out to talk about the medicine, the colonialism, the stigma, and the systems in place that decide whose suffering gets addressed and whose gets ignored. Frankly, I would read John Green's grocery list. The man could publish literally anything and I would be like, yes, I'm ready, thank you. But this is genuinely one of the most accessible, compelling nonfiction books that I've read in a really long time. It's smart without feeling inaccessible, it's emotional without feeling manipulative, and it's angry in a way that feels purposeful and clarifying. I have to admit how ignorant and privileged I am because going into this, because I truly did not understand the scale and the scope of the devastation caused by tuberculosis in the globe in the modern era today. And what stuck with me is, though this is full of interesting factoids, which I love, it was not necessarily about the trivia of TB. The point it makes is that TB is exactly where injustice thrives. The reason it persists is not scientific ignorance. It's actually about the collective choices that our society is making about whose lives are worth money. This is also very short and very readable. It connects the dots so cleanly and helps you walk away feeling not only informed, but also unable to unsee what you now see, which I think is the best kind of nonfiction. Also, everything really is tuberculosis. Okay, are you ready for a delectable morsel at the end? Your little dessert at the end of this video? It's time to talk about romance. I am on a journey to learn what works for me in romance and what doesn't. I am in multiple romance book clubs and it's kind of my favorite. So after finding romance, I have learned that I will always read it at a voracious rate. This might have been the first year of my life that romance was my top read genre, and these are the best of the best. I love fresh love and romances that are beautiful and perfect and sweet, but one thing I'm learning to love the most is romances that embrace some mess. And none better to look at than Promise Me Sunshine by Cara Bastone. This is not just a romance, it is an unsanitized portrait of grief, all with a New York City backdrop. It is painting a romance where you did not think one could or should grow, and it demonstrates with so much care that even messy people who are at the lowest low of their life still deserve love. Enter Lenny. She is unraveling under the weight of her grief. I'm talking stinky, unshowered, moving through New York City like she is underwater. And then there's Miles, who walks beside her through it. This book understands that healing isn't moving on. It's learning how to keep loving even after losing someone. It's about letting the life back in inch by inch. It's about choosing to stay. It's about letting joy coexist with grief. This book is about how being broken doesn't disqualify you from love. And it really worked for me. I am finding myself reaching for more and more romances that grapple with concepts like this. And I think this one is the paragon accomplishment of what that could look like. It's Different This Time is my favorite fall romance. It's true, romances really do hit better in the fall. I don't know if it's the Nora Ephron of it all, but New York fall romance, it's a healing combination. Put this one up for your fall 2026 queue, trust me. The trope is roommates to best friends to lovers. It takes place in a brownstone in New York in the West Village. June is an actress fresh off of a canceled LA show. Adam is a chef, and I love a love interest who's a chef. And he's finally built the career that he used to talk about over late night takeout at their tiny kitchen table. And they have not spoken in 5 years. Then an email with a subject line about their shared brownstone drags June back to New York, and she walks back into the life of the one person she has never been able to stop thinking about. Second chance romance can be done well, and this is proof. I think this one really earns the second chance. You can see why it didn't work the first time, and it makes sense even though you want to gently throttle them. The angst here feels real and rooted in who they are and what they fear. They feel like actual people with jobs and rent and baggage. But let me tell you, the fall vibes. The city feels crisp and golden and magical. Like someone paused a Nora Ephron movie when it gets to October and you get to crawl inside of it. If you want a second chance romance that feels grown, that feels specific, that feels earned, all under a layer of New York autumn leaves, then this one is for you. Listen, before the adaptation was announced, I picked up Heated Rivalry by Rachel Reed. All the things she said running through my head. This book should not have worked for me, but it did. You know it, you love it, it's hockey romance, it's angst, it's yearning. It's a truly atrocious lack of communication. It's two people spending years circling each other without ever once saying the obvious thing. Shane and Ilya do not fall in love neatly. They don't talk it out, they don't choose each other cleanly or quickly. What they do instead is they collide again and again, over and over years. The book stretches their relationship across cities, across seasons, across years. That timescale is both infuriating and everything. I think I was at least 2/3 in before the familiar beats of the romance genre became apparent, before they hit. But when they do, it's because of all of that restraint and resistance beforehand, and it really pays off. By the time they stop running, finally, from each other and the truth and the thing that they both know, it feels so earned and it feels so rewarding. I also think this is the most erotic book I've ever read in my life, and I learned because of this book that yearning and slow burn romance and eroticism are two things that don't necessarily have to be mutually exclusive. And that was not something I was familiar with before this book introduced me to that. And it's been pretty enlightening, actually, to finally come around to realize that. Also, it is amazing to see the cultural gravity that this book has accrued. It's a horny little rivals to lovers hockey book that has somehow helped to kick open the door for attention from the mainstream media onto male-male sports romance. And now, especially with the popularity of the adaptation, it has the potential to put some real conversations on the table about the toxicity of men's pro sports culture. And I love that. Also, clearly I'm in the minority, but I think this cover is a much better representation of this book than whatever this is. Sue me. Okay, I was kind of sleeping on Lila's Sage, and I will rectify that immediately. Lila really said, "What if your landlord was adorable and your roommates were dead?" And I said, yes, chef. Collins is spiraling. She's moving back home to help her family with their failing antique shop and also to avoid her problems like it's an Olympic sport. Oh, and small detail, she and her sister can also see ghosts. So when she rents the spare room above an upholstery shop owned by a shy, nerdy, painfully adorable newcomer, she finds herself wanting to show him the town that she once ran away from. Her childhood haunts, her hidden quiet spots, all of the little corners of Sweetwater Peak that she never thought she could love again. And in between the ghosts and the nostalgia and the really sweet, shy furniture boy, her story unravels. This gave me everything I wanted, especially in the dead of fall when I read it. I also learned that I'm a sucker for a shy main male character who turns the color of a strawberry anytime that she looks at him. A paranormal romance that's a little haunted, a little cozy, and has two lovable weirdos. It hit the spot. So when I'm ranking a romance, we've got 5 stars, one of my favorites of all time, and then we have like 5 stars. The best one I read of the fall. It was transportive, it was of the season, it hit the spot, it was my favorite fall romance read, hands down. Different kind of 5 stars, okay? This was my 5 stars of the summer. At this point, summer doesn't actually start until I read a Carly Fortune book. And I read this in late May on a warm weekend, looking across a body of glittering water in the sun. And no one is writing atmosphere like Carly is. She is the queen of summer atmosphere. Every time I finish one of her books, I'm Googling flights to the location that it took place because I want to be there. I swear I can smell lake air and sunscreen in these pages. And this one is about a photographer heroine learning to step out of behind the lens to let herself be seen. And ultimately, the romance was really lovely. It was really sweet. I think my favorite Carly Fortune book by far is This Summer Will Be Different, and this one was great, but looking back, I don't have a ton to say about it except that this is summer in a bottle. This was her 2025 May release. I will be reading her 2026 May release. I think it takes place in Tofino, and I'm gonna be setting a flight alert for Tofino, so that's fun. That's a good enough reason to be 5 stars in my book. Okay, last in romance is Good Spirits by B.K. Borison. And I did not have putting a Christmas romance on my favorite romances of 2025 on my bingo card, but here we are. So in December, I read 6 Christmas romances back to back to back until I got a reading-induced cavity from the sweetness of it all. That was a mistake for 2 reasons. Number 1 is I don't really like Christmas romances. The second reason is that I loved this one so much that none of the other ones stood a chance. This was so lovely. Nolan is the ghost of Christmas past. Oh, and he's an Irish fisherman who knits and reads and loves cats and I guess is undead. Harriet is a sweet, deeply kind antique shop owner who has been people-pleasing her whole life into invisibility. Nolan is meant to haunt her. Instead, they end up gently unspooling each other's past and futures together. What worked for me is that in a slew of Christmas books, this one really earns its warmth. It's about loneliness and feeling stuck and wanting to be chosen. The romance here grows out of a shared vulnerability and not just holiday vibes, though the holiday vibes are supreme in here. And for me, that's why it lands. It's more of a paranormal romance that happens to take place at Christmas than it is a Christmas romance, and that's probably why it worked. Also, is it just me or is B.K. Borison's writing getting better and better? From Lovelight Farms to First Time Caller to Good Spirits to And Now Back to You, the follow-up to First Time Caller. I swear this year I could witness her pen game got stronger. The emotional beats feel clear, the characters feel fully formed and grounded, even the ephemeral ghost ones. The tenderness is intentional. From here on out, she is an auto-read author for me. And the fact that the next book in this series is about a reaper? Oh, I'm buckled in. I loved this. It had no right to make me feel this good. 5 stars. Well, that's it. There you have it. There are my favorite books of 2025. I would love if you would let me know down below what your top books of 2025 were. And if you've read any of these, I would love to know what you thought. Thank you so much for dealing with whatever crud this is. I am crawling out of a sickness hole so that I can yap about books with you, my favorite thing to do. As always, it's a joy to talk books with you, and we'll chat soon. Bye, my loves.